In this tutorial we're going to be looking at importing animation from Mixamo into Maya and then using that to create a sprite sheet in Photoshop, which we can then use in Constraining. So firstly, what is a sprite sheet? Well, a sprite sheet is a sequence of images which can then be combined together in order to make an animation. There are numerous sprite sheets available online to download of various kind of different characters and other things. So you can even see here on this one website here, we've got tons of different animations that we can import. So the way these work is you line up your sequence of frames in rows along an image, and these can be horizontal and vertical as well. You line them up in the order of the frames that you want them to go at, and then you combine them together in your program, or you can actually do this in Photoshop as well, and then this will play as an animation. This one isn't quite right, but at least you get the kind of rough idea. Now obviously these take quite a lot of time to produce, so one kind of quicker way for you to do this is to use something like Mixamo to grab an animation, import this into Maya, and then output this as a render and create a sprite sheet from it. So if you just go to the Mixamo website, you should have got a login from one of your tutors, and with this login you can then browse animations and find one that you would want to use. So once you've logged in, you can go to the animations tab, which is here, and there are literally hundreds of different animations. So you can see 47 pages here, and you can get various different things: walking, attacking, and all of this. One thing to bear in mind, you will need a lot of different, all the different kind of animations you require for your project. So this could be walking, jumping, attacking, death animation, and idle animation, and so on. So it's worth figuring out exactly which animations you will need before you begin. So what we're going to do is just use like a basic kind of walk cycle. So what we're going to use then is this standing walk forward one here. So all I do is click on this, and this will load in the animation for me. And you can see it's also loading in the textures as well. So once you're happy with whichever animation it is that you've picked, let's just pause that because it gets a bit annoying, you can go to Add to Pack, and you can see this is in progress now. Then if we go to View Download, you can see that is loading up. And if we just go to Queue Download, we want to make sure we're in FBX. Pose T-pose is fine. We'll keep the frames per second at 30, and we won't have any keyframe reduction, so we'll do Queue Download. You can do keyframe reduction actually, like you don't really want to be doing all 30 frames, but I was going to do this in Maya rather than in here. So we can see that this is currently processing. Once it's finished, you can just hit download, and that should download as a handy little zip folder. So with that done, we're going to jump into Maya, and the first thing we want to do is set up a project for downloading these. Now I already have one here called animation project. So what you'll want to do though is go to File, Project Window, and go to New, and type in what you want to call it. I'm just going to call this Animation Game this time. Make sure you choose a suitable location. You can choose your M drive if you're on the Uni PCs, or you can use the S Programs folder. And we'll just hit Accept. Now what that does is, when we go to File, say Save Scene As, you'll see it's automatically put us in the scene folder for that project. And what this means for us is when we render out our images, they're going to go straight in the Images folder. Okay, that's downloaded. So we go show in folder. Let's put that here. So within my downloads folder, I'm just going to make a new folder called animation FBX. I could have obviously done this in my Maya project as well. I'm just going to extract these two files into that folder, and I probably do need to clean up my downloads folder at some point. Drag those in there. So we'll jump back into Maya and we'll go to File, Import, and I'll just browse to that folder. You can see why it would have been much better if I just actually put this straight into my project. And then what we want to download is the standing walk forward. Oh, I'm sorry, that's the new scene. So import both of them, do the character first, and we can see that's coming nicely. Now at the moment you can see I can't see the actual textures. All you need to do in your viewport is just turn on your texture display here and you can see the textures nicely. So what we then want to do is pull out individual frames from this. So if I just go to my rendering tab, which I'm already in, if you just try hitting render current frame, okay, so you get an idea of what that frame is going to look like. You can actually use different light sources as well if you want, ambient light and so on, to actually get some lighting on this model. But we're going to leave that off for now just so that we can import this okay. So the next thing we want to do then is actually link a camera to this model. So because we want to make sure we're rendering at exactly the angle we want. I mean, it could be up here if you're doing a top-down game or an isometric game, could be from the back, could be from the side, could be from the front. So we're going to do from the side in this case. So again, in your rendering tab, hit this camera button here, and that will make a camera directly in the center of your world. If you press W to go to move, and then R to go to scale, and just scale this up, you'll see at the moment the camera is facing the wrong way. So press E to go to rotate, and just rotate this 90 degrees. And you should be able to see down here, that's definitely 90 degrees. Press W to go back to move, and we'll just move this camera back to here. Now in our attribute editor, we'll want to set the camera to be orthographic, like so. And actually, press R again to scale, we might as well scale this back down. So in order to look through this camera, if we just go to panels, look through selected, we'll just zoom out with the roller ball on the mouse and zoom in on the character like so. And if you just hit play, you can see that's going to work okay. Now one problem with this though is, if we just jump back into our sequence here, the frames need to render individually like so. So I'll just show you what I mean. So like each frame is rendered out like so. Now the problem with this as it currently is the character is moving along the camera shot. So it's going to make it very awkward to actually line these up in Photoshop or Flash or whichever program you want to use. So in order to make that easier, we need to link the camera to this character. So if we hold down spacebar and left click on the Maya button and go to the perspective view, let's scale this camera down again, then press this little tab here to open our outliner, which shows you all the models in your scene. And then if we just maximize some of these, the rig basically, and we're going to find something like this spine one, then hold shift and left click on the camera so you now have both of those selected, and then hold down spacebar and go to your constrain tab and just go to parent. And you should find that now the camera moves with that. So with just the camera selected, if we go to renderer, panels, look through selected, and turn off the grid, you can see that that is moving okay. So now we know that that will come out correctly. One thing you might find though is that your camera might not be in the right position. So let's move the camera and notice how it snaps back to where it was before. This is because it's linked to that spine joint. So wherever the spine joint moves, the camera moves with it. So in order to solve that, if you just come in your outliner on the camera and then select this constraint, then what you can do is use these translates to move this up, move the position of the camera. So this is X, this is Y, and this is Z, and you can see that based off these axes here. So Y is pointing straight up. So if we say put that to say 60, it's going to raise the camera, and now when this moves, that will always be there. Put it to 0. That lowers it, and if you change this one, let's put say 100, it's going to move it over there. So yeah, you can use these if you want to change the position of the camera. One thing to bear in mind as well, if you just tap spacebar, in fact what you'll need to do is go to this tab here, and that will let you go in and out like that. This will give you your standard 4 views and help you to judge where the camera needs to be positioned. So again, we'll go on our perspective and we'll go look through selected. And the next thing we need to do then is actually set up our render setting. So if you just come over to the rendering tab and hit this render button, we're going to render in Maya software. So we're going to work our way through the common tab first and then through the Maya software tab. So the first thing to do then is turn on our film gate, so resolution gate. So this shows you what the render frame is going to look like. The next thing we want to do is set a file name prefix, so I just call this character walk. And we'll set this to PNG, so we have transparency. Then we'll set the name here to name dot, and then with dot extension on the end, and we'll just leave frame padding of 0. So it's now going to number our frames correctly. The next thing we need to do is set the start and end frame. So if we just come along to the last frame of animation there, it's on frame 28. You can check this actually just by selecting everything, and you can see when that ends. If you fire this up and just select it all like that, you can see the last frame is 28. So we'll do 1 to 28, and renderable camera, we want to set that to render cam shape. So just make sure you select your camera and name it something like render cam. And I'm just going to go back to look through selected, because the next thing we want to do is set our resolution. Now obviously you can see this render frame is going to use a lot of space that isn't required. So let's put our width to something like 300. And we'll leave our height on 540, but we're just going to zoom in like so and make sure that fills the entire image. But just make sure that you actually do make sure that the entire character is filling the screen. Remember, it's going to reset some of that view because you need to actually select the constraint and move this down on Y like so. So yeah, make sure that's filling it nicely like so. Now one other thing here, I'm mentioning this resolution. Make sure that you've defined what your resolution is before you start. I mean, if the character is, let's say, that small on screen, you're not going to need this much resolution. So make sure that you do have some idea of what resolution you want to have before you start. I'm doing this probably much higher than a lot of you guys will actually need. So the next thing we need to do is define what frames this is going to use. So we're doing 1 to 28 here, but that's just a silly amount of frames for this walk cycle. We don't want to be copying 28 different frames into a sprite strip. So probably at the most we want is 12. So this is really easy to set up. You just take this number here and that will render every other frame depending on what that's on. So if we do 2 in there, that will render every second frame, which will give us 14 frames. So that would probably do if we did 3. Obviously this would be 28 divided by 3. So we'll leave 2 in there for now. And just obviously that's going to give us quite a high number, really. So maybe, yeah, we will leave that as 2. So the wrong thing there, like so. But yeah, you will probably be able to do a lot less than this. The last thing we want to do then is come to Maya software and just set the quality here to highest quality. There's no real render stuff going on here anyway, no highly complex render things. So obviously you can drop in lights and stuff to get some lighting on this, but in this case we're just going to leave it. Even if you did have a odd light in there, it's not going to affect this enough to mean that you take it off highest quality. Okay, so looks like we're ready to render. So in order to render, what we do is come to rendering, batch render. You can get to this through the render tab, by the way. So come over to this rendering tab, then render, batch render, and just hit batch render. So you can see the information down here, and that will tell you when it's completed the rendering. So it can be worth doing a quick preview frame to make sure that you're happy with how this is looking before you start. So if you just hit that button there, that will render you out a preview of the frame as well. So once that's done, you can browse to your render folder just to check how things are looking. And to get to this, you just browse to where your Maya project is, go to images, and you should find them all in here. You can even do a little preview if you just click on one to load it up, and then just keep tapping right on the keyboard, and that will show you your walk cycle as it currently is. So the next thing to do then is to get this all together into a sprite sheet in Photoshop. You can also do this in other software like Flash and so on, but I'm just going to show you how to do it in Photoshop. So if we go to File, Open, what we're going to do first is just load up our first frame. Then I'm going to go to Image, Image Size, and we can see we've done here a width of 300 and a height of 540. So using a bit of maths here, we know that we want to have 300 pixels for each frame of our animation. And what we'll probably do is have 2 columns so we don't have a stupidly kind of long image. So if we go to File, Open, and let's just see how many we have here. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So we need 7 across by 2 down. So all you need to do then, if we just come in here, we do 7 times 300 pixels equals 2100, and then we need 540 times 2, which is 1080. So we've got 2100 by 1080. So File, New, 2100 by 1080. Hit OK. So the next really useful thing we need to do is set up our grid. So if we go to File, because a grid is going to allow us to place our images properly. So if we just go to File, Edit, Preferences, grid. We'll put a grid line every 300 pixels, and to be fair, that should be okay. I know we don't have the correct distance on the height, but that's okay because we're just going to place them along here first anyway, and then we can use the base to line them up too. So our first frame is here, and one problem with this, I'll just show you, if you now do Control-A, Control-C to copy, and paste this in, it's not going to put it in the right place, and it's difficult to actually paste it. You see, like I can't actually set that up right. You need to make sure they're perfectly placed in these slots, otherwise the animation is going to kind of jump around all over the place. Let's just delete that layer out. So what we want to do in order to get this okay is if we add a new layer in and fill that in with white, then we can select both of these layers, duplicate layers and put this onto our frame sheet, and then we'll just drag that up to the top like so. And it does look like I might have done a let's just check. I'm going to check that I've got that actually right. And yep, that is right, so that's all good. So I'm just going to delete that one, paste it down there. Okay, so he's now in place, so we can shut this one down, or you can leave him open so you can copy the white layer, it's up to you. So we'll open the next one, duplicate this layer into there by right clicking on it and going to duplicate, and then pasting it into character walk 3. And then we'll duplicate these into Untitled and drag that, and it should snap nicely into place. If you want to check if it snaps, just press Control and T, and you can see you get the outline border edges of the layers like so. If it's not snapping, go to View, Snap there, and that will mean that it will snap. Shut both of these down. It's up to you how you want to do it. I kind of prefer to do them one at a time rather than having them all open because it's less confusing. But that is, again, up to you. But literally I'm just going to keep pasting in each one. So now I'm number 4 now. You see what I mean now about how if you have too many frames it's just very confusing. So you do not need to have as many frames as I've done here really. So this is a big old character. If your character is very small, you can literally get away with having hardly any at all. Like even a couple of frames can make up a small character's walk cycle. So I'm going to do right click, duplicate layers, paste that into Untitled 1, get that one lined up. So I made a note of the fact that I was on number 9 there, so now I'm on this one. Duplicate layers, Untitled 1, and paste that into place. And what I'm going to do is just get started on the second row as well before I stop recording and just finish this, so you don't have to watch me doing all these. Right, so that's all of them done. So just to show you that, so we've done 13 there, so we need 15. Okay, like that. So you can see the way that just snaps to the bottom. Control T just to check that it's definitely there, and then just finish off those ones. So if we just look at a website like this, with a load of different sprite sheets on, you can see these follow exactly the same kind of principles, and you can see a lot of these animations are only using a few frames. So there's loads of these kind of things available. Obviously that one's not very big. Obviously the newer the kind of games are, the more kind of detail you get in the sprite sheets. So yeah, you can see there's only four frames in that entire animation there. And it's quite a complex jump up and spin, and you can see this has got a couple of less frames than this little walk cycle that we're doing now. So I'll finish this off and then resume the video when I've pasted all these. So with all these pasted in, the one thing we'll need to do now is turn off all of the white layers so that we have transparency on this. Otherwise the white will show through on any background that you have. You can select these like this as well if it's a problem, or if you go to panel options, oh, they're already set to the biggest one anyway. Right, so our sprite sheet's ready to go. So as I said before, if you're doing multiple animations here, so say you've got walk left, walk right, run left, run right, jump, death, idle, cast spell and attack, you're not going to be wanting to have this many frames because that's too much work. So I'd literally just have 6 or 7 in the walk cycle kind of thing. This is mass overkill, what I've done here. So we'll do File, Save As. And in the images here, I'm going to save this as a PNG, and I'm going to call this character walk. Let's call it walk right, I guess, and hit save. So these settings should be fine. And then the next thing we need to do is bring this into Construct 2. So with Construct 2 loaded, I've just done new and just done a whatever you want, an HD project or a new project or whatever. Then what we'll do is we'll right click on here and we're going to go to Insert New Object and we're going to select Sprite. And then we're going to click on the frame here. And then you'll see we have this animation frame tab here. If we right click outside that space and then go Import Frames from Sprite Strip and browse to that folder that we were just in, which should be images. And there you go, you can see it here. We'll go to Open. Now we need to set the number of horizontal and vertical. We know we had 7 across and we had 2 down. You can also tick that on as well. And that will take out that first frame that we don't need. So you can see what this has done is automatically generated an animation for us. So if we just come in here and drag this down like so, then if we hit this play button here, just to show you real quick, so we'll close that and then hit play. By default you can see the animation is playing. However, there's a lot of settings that we can mess around with. For a start, if we double click on it again and click the animation up here, we can set the speed and we can set this to loop as well. So we just set this to yes, that's going to loop. We can put repeat count, say 20 or whatever. Obviously this isn't going to loop when you're playing in game if you just tap it once or whatever. Speed, I think it's higher is faster, but we can confirm that in a minute. So we'll shut this down again and try hitting play. There you can see that's a bit quicker and it's actually kind of looping now as well. You can also see the size of it, so you can see how big that is. This could be really small unless you're having a really kind of close in game. You're probably not going to need it that big. So yeah, to set it faster, let's up to say 20. Close it down again and then hit play, and you can see it's a lot faster now. So yes, I've done slight overkill on the frame count and the render size, but you get the point. Obviously from within here, what we could also do, one thing I mentioned was having different kind of light source on it. So you could stick a directional light in your scene and kind of set this to the direction you want it to go. So you can see you're getting that. Actually some light cast onto your model. And you can set obviously the intensity and so on, and make sure you've got kind of shadows on as well. So I would use ray trace shadows for this. And depending on what's going on in your model, you could actually set the colour of your lighting as well. So yeah, and so on, like so. So yeah, that's how you can use Mixamo to generate some animations.